Hey everybody, Damon Parker here, hoping to give you some words of encouragement. This isn't going to really be a sermon. I'm not going to stand up and move around, but I want to share a few things I've been thinking about this week that have to do with where our theology lies during a time like this. And so I hope you find it helpful too. So just for a minute, I want to talk about what is God doing? I'm sure a lot of you remember, but I distinctly remember a feeling. And the feeling was I was standing in our little bedroom that Melody and I shared. This is in the first little house we ever lived in after we got married. And Melody had been up a huge chunk of the night with Grant, and he wasn't sleeping well, and she had gone into the bathroom to kind of get ready for the day, and I'd already gotten ready for work and was just kind of holding Grant and taking care of him till she was ready to take over. And I turned on the TV and was watching Good Morning America, and they were talking about an airplane that had hit the World Trade Center. I think I went and actually knocked on the bathroom door and said, "Melody, a plane hit the World Trade Center. Isn't that crazy?" But when I returned to the room, I was holding Grant. He was about a year old. And I saw the second plane hit a building. And I instantly knew that this wasn't an accident. I knew without a doubt we were under attack, that this terrible thing was happening, that people were dead, that something awful was going on. And I just remember this feeling overwhelming me, starting right then, but going throughout the day of just, man, what is going on, and what is God doing about it? And I remember feeling like I didn't have an answer, like there was no good answer, like there was nothing that could speak to what I was feeling that day. Maybe you feel that sometimes. That feeling that you don't know exactly what God is doing, and it seems like God isn't doing anything, or that God is doing the wrong thing, or that... And if you have that feeling, and maybe you have it right now, I hope the next couple of minutes can be encouragement to you. And let me start by saying one quick thing, and that is, I think there's a real danger in trying to name exactly what God is doing. There's a real danger in saying, oh, this is exactly why this is happening, because God definitely means for this to happen, or this is exactly the plan that God has laid out. That is dangerous. Not only is it dangerous because it can disappoint us, it's dangerous because it leads us down a path of thinking we know something that we truly don't. And at the end of that path is often dashed dreams and hopes and faith. And so the first thing I want to encourage us to do is to back off of trying to name exactly what God is doing right now in these circumstances. But there's something else I think we have to think about. You know, throughout history, people have tried to name the evil that is among them, to give it a name, to place some blame. And throughout history, that has primarily been laid to rest on other people. So at certain times, the problem of evil in the world was the fault of the Jews, or the blacks, or the gays, or the Muslims, or whatever group you want to name. There's something comforting about saying that evil or bad things come because there's these evil people and they're the cause. It reminds me of a quote. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I don't think I said that correctly, but this is a quote from him. He said, "If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them." I mean, wouldn't that be comforting if we knew those evil people were over there and we could just get rid of them and it would get rid of the evil? But as he says, but the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? Throughout history, what we have learned is that all people possess within them good and evil, hope and heartache. And so we can't just name somebody or some group and then push it aside. And I think that's a valuable lesson because right now, there isn't a group to name. What is hurting people, what is killing people is a virus. Something we can't even see. It's not a person or a group of people. It's a strange living object that gets inside of us and uses our body for its own ends and then discards us, and there's no one to blame. Which can make this time hard. It's hard when we don't have a place to hang the blame or the hurt. And so in these moments, it's often when we turn to God. And we think, well, then what's God doing about it? If it's not those people and we need to stop those people, then what is God doing to make this better? And when you hear people ask that, sometimes our natural reaction is to try to clear God's name, to say, wait, it's not God's fault. This is just a thing that happens. Or it's not God's fault. It is those people. Or and our desire can be to defend God because we feel like that's necessary to defend our faith. But God does not desire our defense. God does not need to be cleared of anything. Rather, the Bible points us in a drastically different direction. Listen to these words from Psalm 13. How long, Lord? How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts, and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer, Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. The Bible is full of words of lament. Of people facing evil, facing trials, facing suffering. And rather than blaming simply other people, they turn and they say, God, what are you doing? Where are you? Why aren't you helping us? They don't defend God. They lay their suffering and their fears and their hopes and their dashed dreams at God's feet and say, where are you? Help us. You see, the Bible makes it clear over and over again that when something crazy is happening, when something evil is torturing us, when something awful is at play, that to cry out to God in lament and despair and fear is normal. It's normal. It's normal to say, where are you? It's normal to say, do something. It's normal to say, please help us. In fact, it's faithful. When things are crazy, when awful things are happening, asking where God is and what God is actually doing about it is normal. It's what the psalmists do. It's what the prophets do. It's what Jesus does. My God, why have you forsaken me? Where are you? Show up. Do something. It's an act of faith. But when there's something crazy happening, when there's something we don't understand, when people are suffering, there's also one other thing I think we can do. We can see God in the acts of kindness and in the spirit of those who suffer. That is also normal. That is faithful. To look around and say, I don't know exactly what God is doing. I don't understand what the plan actually is. I can't put together the pieces and say, this is exactly what's going to happen. But I can look at this person who in the midst of chaos is being kind and helpful and compassionate, and I can see the goodness of God. You see, I can't tell you what God is doing. I can't tell you why this is happening. I don't have those answers. But here's what I can say. The other day, Christy and Philip came to our house. And Christy got out of their car and put some eggs down on a bag of mulch I had sitting outside. And I stood about 10 feet away and waved, and we said hi and talked for a second, and then she got back in the car, and after she left, I went over and picked up those eggs. And that small act of helping us feed our family during this time when it's hard to get food, that's what God is doing. When we see people who really have no fear for themselves, they know that they're probably going to be okay, but they socially distance from others because they want others to be okay. Well, then we see what God is up to. When teachers work their tails off to completely change how they teach, to do everything new, to try to connect with students in ways they're just not used to, they're just not adept at, but do everything in their power to give their students the learning they need. And we see the goodness of God. When people who are making minimum wage and have very little in life keep coming day after day and stocking what there is and putting it on the shelves for us, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of people who are made in the image of God. You see, I don't know exactly why this is happening or what exactly God is doing about it. But I do know this. Over the last week, I have seen 1,000 acts of goodness and kindness, of doctors and nurses willing to suffer to help us. That's where God is. God is in the hands of that doctor hooking up someone to a ventilator and risking their own life to do it. God is in the lab worker staying night after night after night to try to help get us closer to a vaccine. God is in the goodness of people and in the compassion we feel for one another. May God help us to not only see the goodness happening around us, but help us to be part of that goodness.